on the side. Yes, it is with the yellow though. 2.76 in second place as they head down towards the hairpin on the short run down. Now the Cayman's coming through. Already 2.5 minutes since we got the green flag, and here comes the 12 car Cayman 718 GT4 Club Sport Field, and as they now come to their green light, controlled by their pole sitter Carl Janssen for Core. Very difficult for the drivers. They'll be seeing that drop out. Looks like there's an Audi in the pit lane as well. Yes, there is. There's a TCR car starting from the pit lane. So that car, and they turned around right at the beginning for the 718 club class. And that's going to leave, I think. Now, who was that who got turned around there?
I think it might have been Christian Bug from second place.
Yes.
That really helps Carl Janssen. It was behind him. He was the pole man, so he should have a very decent lead now, because obviously everyone had to avoid what's going on behind. I think it was Christian Bug who rotated.
Two cars starting from the pit lane. Elia Earhart in the Car Collection Sim Racing 33 Audi, and the Yannick Danish number 1 for Zorg Rennsport ETCR from the TCR class. So I've just picked those two up now, showing in the pit lane. So whether they had problems in qualifying or whether they've had problems since, not sure. But they are shown in the pits at the moment, as through comes the TCRs. Diogo Pinto for Sim RC TCR from Schuttler, Team Heusingfeld. Pretty clean start as they head down to the first corner. And these cars have given us, this class, Bruce, has given us tremendous entertainment with 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 and 7 of them all line astern, almost as if they were hitched together.
Yeah, and what we see when they take that massive long run down Dottinger Her back at the end of the lap, even if your last two in a group of 6 have fallen back slightly, they get the benefit of a tow of 4 cars and they catch them up again. So you're quite right, we had half a dozen cars at least for the first hour, nose to tail. Absolutely brilliant in the TCR class.
Well, Get Speed Performance, Fabian Schiller disconnect right when the race was about to start. He's had to throw over to his teammate who was standing by for the Get Speed machine.
So that's Philip Noller. They've been well placed in the championship, so bit of a hiccup for them.
This is one thing that does happen in the real that doesn't happen in the real world, that does happen here. But that's why, Bruce, they all have a second driver. Normally at the start of the race, you probably wouldn't have second man in the car, second driver in the car, suited, booted and ready to go, because it's an hour away. Maybe after a couple of laps you might get him in, but you know, at this point you've always got to have somebody sitting on a rig just in case there's a rig problem or indeed a disconnect problem, and that's exactly what happened for Team Get Speed.
Well, let's just hope that Philip Noller wasn't sitting there with a donut in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, thinking, let's enjoy the start. Imagine the scramble there. But I tell you what, I've been watching the gaps at the front. Sami Matti-Trogen just under a second clear. Agustin Canapino keeps chipping away. It's exactly a second clear now. Philip Ellis, the best of the BMWs in third, then Philip Eng, who won't like being the second of the BMWs, in fourth place. But it really is very tight indeed, nose to tail in the GT3 class. Sami Matti-Trogen leading the way, but where's the next move going to come? Well, I think we know at the end of that long straight back towards the pits.
So Trogen then just 9/10 of a second ahead of Canapino, and the drivers trying to settle into this first racing lap. Got full live timing and scoring for you on the page at radio-show.co.uk, and you can get the strategy screen up as well. The little graph towards the right hand top corner there will give you the analysis and all kinds of extra information, exactly as we see it here in the booth at RSL_studio. If you'd like to drop Bruce and I a line onto the Dottinger Her, then for the first time, some weaving around the red, white and blue BMW sitting down in, that's the Valkenhorst 35, isn't it? So it was the Schnitzelarm car behind that he's trying to break the toe on, the yellow Mercedes, as they come down towards the famous Bilstein crossover bridge, which is that little kink just over the brow. So fast, right into the entrance to the final serpentine run onto the start-finish line. And it will be Sami Mäki-Trogen who goes through in the lead to complete the first lap.
But the person who made the move there, John, was Philipp Eng, who went past Philipp Ellis. So the BMW is now up into third place for BS competition. The black Mercedes is down to fourth after that brilliant start from Philipp Ellis. But the thing that struck me, it doesn't matter which round of the championship, Philipp Eng normally gains 1 or 2 places into the opening corner. But if you recall, he was pushed really wide on the outside line, or out over the white line at the outside, and fell from third back to fifth. He's now trying to resurrect his hope. So up into third place he goes now. Agustin Canapino just a little bit in front of him. So as long as Philipp Ellis can drop away from Philipp Eng's tail, the BMW will start to catch that second place Audi. But all along, Sami Mäki-Trogen, the front, eking his way clear. 1.14 seconds now. Not much in it at all, but he's still in the important place at the lead.
And Bruce, barely 4 seconds away from his qualifying time with a slow run onto the start-finish line. That was a very good... he's got a clear circuit ahead of him as he does that, but even so, Martin Ascher continues to lead in the Porsche number 227 for Ascher Racing, the black... And Martin Ascher continues to lead 4 seconds away from his qualifying time. Is where it's really taken off in the last, 3.5 months or thereabout. Martin Ascher, who's been a real star in the Cup 2 category for Cup Porsche 911 Cup cars. Not the easiest of cars to drive these in the real world or in sim racing, ask anybody. But the challenge gratefully accepted and manfully accepted by Martin Asher. Get the setup right. I'm told they are a very, very satisfying car, Bruce Jones, to drive quickly.
Yes, we had a whole host of drivers mentioning the fact. Someone, I think you actually, in an interview, I can't think with who, said, why did you not enter the top class?
Yes.
Said, well, it was more fun for me to take the challenge of racing a Porsche 911. And we know in real life that a lot of people still find a Porsche 911 a car that is on its own in terms of racing. It's tricky, but the challenge in getting it right is something that a lot of pro full-time race drivers like to do. And I love your phrase just then, the bridge, because before we had the parallel universe of real-world racing, Full Metal, if you want to go to that phrase again, and sim racing, and we're having drivers crossing both ways. Pro drivers like Sammy Matty-Trogan, who's leading the race by next to nothing now, really got Canapino. Oh, sorry, that's the second place car. That's Canapino, who's got Eng all over him. But the fact that some are crossing one way and some the other, it's not closed shop at all. And I think we're going to need a couple of bridges shortly, because it's going to be a lot of traffic going both ways. And certainly for a lot of metal racers, real-world racers, they now know there will be no such thing as a weekend off anymore. They won't have a gap between any races. They can cross from one side to the other. You can go from real racing to sim racing and back again according to their calendars. But I think for a lot of people, they're going to become full-time racing widows as their other half decides that they can race every weekend of the year, and maybe some midweek events as well, John.
Well, and you heard the issue of Charles Leclerc. His significant other had to buy a months-long subscription to Twitch to be able to send him a message to say, I'm standing at the door and I can't get in. Can you come? Can you stop what you're doing?
What do you mean it's a 24-hour race?
Yes, exactly. So, second and third, closing back up together. Agustin Canapino then from Philip Eng. And sitting in behind them, the slightly darker coloured car is Phil Ellis for the Manfilter team, HTP Winward. The American team, which has ensured the future of the long-running in as HTP and in very other form, of course, of HTP in Altendienst is where they are based in Germany. Down from Leipzig, and beautiful part of the world down there. And Christian Horn-Ardel, who's running that team in the real world. Bryce and Russell Ward, IMSA racers of some repute down through the years. It seemed very long ago that they were club racers, and they've really taken to this and backed up their racing involvement with getting involved in running teams. And now HTP Winward merges together on both sides of the Atlantic. This battle for second, huge amount of draft from Philip Eng there as he drafted up to Canapino. But that Audi, Bruce Jones, is very quick indeed in a straight line. And even with the draft that the Z4 was getting, and Philip Eng, by the way, puts in a new fastest lap last time around, even with the draft the Beamer was getting, couldn't even get alongside that white and green Audi in second place.
That's precisely why he tried to do it once he got into the stadium section there. But all along, don't forget, it was a three-car draft because Philip Ellis tucking it behind in the Mercedes as well. But you're quite right, going on to Dottingerhoa, the Audi just goes off like an arrow off a bow. But the BMW is close enough to be in the mix. And we've seen also the Mercedes, that their performance comes in different areas around the track. But this, to me, sums up GT3 racing. At least three manufacturers duking it out. The opening round actually had Ferraris finishing first and third. We haven't seen so much of that team since, but it's great to have the manufacturer variety. But I think the thing I've always found in these 3-hour races is the fact that the Audi seems to be fleetest of foot when it comes to qualifying, but when you get to the race, the BMW comes on stronger and stronger. Mercedes not quite been at the sharp end, but it must be said that Philip Ellis is doing a fantastic job for the Manfilter HTP team. And I love the combination riding on board at the moment with Philip Ellis. Just as they complete the time on the Grand Prix circuit, and right now they cross that white line, out into the country they go. This is where it gets harder to overtake, easier to make a mistake, of course. You might be able to profit, but these drivers are making fewer and fewer as they head around the Nordschleife. First round of the championship, people did make mistakes, but right now we're getting guys who are nailing it, John. Absolutely nailing it.
And yeah, and it's not just the speed though, Bruce, is it? As you've pointed out many times, it is the absolute metronomic consistency and the precision on a circuit with simply so many corners and so easy. As anybody who's been on this track on whatever platform you use, getting a clean lap in itself, even if it's slow, you think to yourself, I haven't hit the barrier that time around. That, I've done all right. And these guys up to 24 hours, and we had people doing 4 hours at a stretch in the virtual 24 hours. It was an extraordinary thing to see.
Now, another factor, these opening laps, the only laps in the race when they haven't got lapped cars to lap up ahead of them, the 3 junior classes will start to come into play. So it's not just about keeping the speed, keeping your position. It's about knowing when to make a pass and when to back off for a corner or two, hoping you won't be passed by a rival who's tucked under your rear wing. But you've got to have an element of caution in this. If you're super bold, you are going to come unstuck unless all your stars are in alignment. Right now, it must be said, Sami Mäki-Trogan's having the easy drive, but even without anyone right on his tail, he's nearly 2 seconds to good. We've seen him just in the last few seconds just cutting corners, kicking up the dirt. In second place, Agustin Canapino would love not to have pressure from behind. That's stopping him catching up with Sami Mäki-Trogan. But these guys are right on the edge.
Settling into I say settling into the pace. They don't. They're just on the pace straight away. First, second, and third in the Cup 2 category. Sim RC, Claudius Veed in that Asher Racing livery, but racing for Sim RC. German Sim Racing in third position. Top 3, barely 10 Porsche 911 lengths between them as they head onto the Hatzenbach for their third lap. And Martin Asher leading then from the 276 in second position. Third in that run, as I say, Keanu Buschmann for the German Sim Racing team. And these 3 at the moment, I'm looking at the splits as I'm sure you are, Bruce, and it is fractions, not of a second, fractions of tenths of a second between these guys at the moment. They're race spot rear wing on that yellow and black car, and they are literally matching each other corner by corner, and hundreds and thousands between them.
Yeah, so you get excited if you suddenly see one of these top 4 drivers has set the fastest sector time, but there are so many. Well, I've got 12 sector splits around the lap on my timing screen, but you're quite right, we're not talking tenths of a second, we're not even talking hundreds, it's largely thousandths of a second is the difference between them. So much as Philip Ellis in sector number 4, for sake of reference, set the fastest sector of anyone, it's about 4 hundredths of a second quicker than anybody else. That's nothing, of course. He then loses at the next one, so he's still in 4th place, still setting quick times, but we are trading what we talk hundredths of a second between them right now. That's why second, third and fourth as they go through the carousel are just absolutely nose to tail.
This is allowing our leader Sami Mäki-Trogan to build up what, in the terms of the early part of this 5th round of the NLS, digital NLS powered by VCO, it is the Mahler 3 Stunden round 5, and that's, in the context of this race, 1.8 seconds is actually comfortable for Sami Mäki-Trogan at the moment. Certainly not in a comfort zone at all. Augustin Canapino with Philip Eng and Philip Ellis sitting behind him. Those 3 are within, let's call it, a second.
Yeah, and just looking at that gap, just a whisker over a second, second, third and fourth, Canapino, Eng, Ellis. Then there's a nearly 6 second gap to Mikkel Jensen, but he's got 2 drivers within a second of him. He's got Marcel Marchewitz in 6th place in that yellow Schnitzelarm Racing Mercedes. Then Bruno Spengler, heard of him before? I certainly have. He's in 7th and he's doing his utmost, but most of the overtaking does not come out on the Nordschleife, where the cars can leave the ground from time to time over the rises. It comes when they use that incredible toe they can get up the Döttinger Höhe towards the end of the lap. And of course, as we saw last time around, that's what Philipp Eng in third place plans to do. He plans to use the toe to catch and maybe past the driver in second place, Agustin Canapino. But Canapino, they're kicking up the dirt, trying everything to find another few hundreds just to make sure that toe isn't realised until, well, the latest possible moment up that long straight back to the end of the lap.
If this is your first time watching Virtual World Racing, just to underline the amount of work that goes in, I was talking to a factory driver from the real world this week about the IMSA series at VIR, and that is just, I think, 3 miles VIR, and they were telling me the minimum amount of practice for that event to get to the point where they would have felt comfortable about representing their brand, it would be 3 6-hour sessions on consecutive days, and 3 full 6-hour sessions at a time. Side by side for second into Teegaard. There was a little touch there, and there's a bigger touch after that, and Canapino comes off the worst. There was a side-by-side entrance to the uphill left-hander. Canapino pulls out of the danger zone and then waits very gentlemanly for cars to go by. He'll limp that Audi, and that's the series leader in the fence. Huge repercussions for the championship. Let's have a look at the VCO replay of that. The BMW coming round the outside onto the grass just after Bilstein, and then a tiny little touch side to side, and as the BMW came back on, nails the right rear of Canapino's car. So Philipp Eng there onto the grass and just trying to hang on to it, not suggesting, Bruce, for a moment that was deliberate by Eng. I think he was just struggling to keep the car going in a straight line and couldn't slow down enough. There was a bit of weaving going on, trying to break the toe as they came to the Bilstein bridge. He swung out from underneath the back of the Audi. Yeah, there was a tiny little touch, the tiniest of touches that sent Eng onto the track, but it was the rejoin that had the problem.
It was the fact he was on the grass on a couple of points through the kink, and then the second, just having a replay, and it was the second time. Yes, it was a bit of side by side. The BMW totally on the grass, rejoined the track, hit the rear corner of the Audi, which went to 360 down the barriers, and then lost with a crumpled rear wing and probably suspension damage too, you'd have to suggest, John. Rejoined, it had to wait for the traffic in about 10th place to limp back to the pits. But Philipp Eng in the wars, but he continues. 2.2 seconds down on the race leader, but we've got a whole host of cars in the pits.
Yeah, and they'll burn some time here to do some repairs. Although we have seen Canapino and his teammate Alex Arana do a short run at the start, and that was forced on them by an accident as well. I seem to remember going up the hill at Breitscheid, was it, or at one of the corners coming up the hill on the far side of the track in 2 races ago, and they managed to make that work for them, if memory serves, Bruce.
They did. They were sort of forced into adapting, but it was down to the fact you don't have to have all your damage repaired done at any point, one single point. You can share it out between your pit stops, but certainly that was probably a better drive than their win, it has to be said, but phenomenal. So let's see if we can have another fight back from Canapino and Arana, but right now, not where they want to be, sitting in the pits.
Hello to Dave Alcock, who's tuned in today, one of our real world fans as well. So many real world fans using these online races for a bit of quote-unquote normality in these strange times. And so many of you also saying, well, listen, I'm wandering about, I'm doing a bit of gardening at the moment, tweeting in at RSL_studio. I'm listening to you and Bruce talking about this. I can hear the cars in the background. It's real, as far as I'm concerned. And
I do this as a break from gardening, actually.
You've got quite a lot of gardening to do, Bruce, in fairness.
Yes. My head in the noose.
Cup 2 class for Porsches. The 911 Cup cars. Still first, second and third.
That's all it takes. It's not hard to get right.
Taste my bread of sours. Sours? Sorrows. Taste my bread of sorrows.
Oh, fuck. May's in trouble. Here, catch. So this is where you've been hiding all the loot this whole time. Oi, heads up.
Face me, Sekiro.
At last, a worthy opponent. Here comes the airplane. Time to eat your lasagna. Get it in ya. Oh, fuck off, Angela. Alright, bitch, you want some fucking lasagna? Have some fucking lasagna. Yeah, alright, one sec.
No more getting handsy for you, Hellspawn.
Look at this guy. You see, it is only with the utmost care and precision that a marks... Oh, fuck off. You cannot escape from me. I'm a qualified dentist.
Don't fuck with me and no one will get hurt.
Dun, 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 dun.